Welcome to the Pioneer Podcast. This is Ernst Roots. And today's episode is an exceptionally important episode because there were two major developments in the run-up to this conversation. The one is that we've just heard the news that Donald Trump has been re-elected as President of the USA, that he will now be the next President of the USA. And the other is the massive protest march that was hosted at the Voortrekker Monument in Pretoria against the BELA Act. That is the legislation that the South African government wishes to implement, according to which they seek to take control of our schools. But before we get to today's conversation, let me start once again by thanking our viewers and our listeners for their continued feedback, for sharing these interviews, these discussions, for giving us their comments on what we've been discussing, also the suggestions we're getting on who to get onto the podcast and what topics we should discuss. Now, as I have mentioned before, the Pioneer Podcast is not one of those podcasts that you have to subscribe to or pay for, but we would like to encourage you to make some form of a contribution to the continued existence of this podcast. We have some plans to also take this podcast overseas, to interview people during some of our trips to Europe, America, and so forth, and other ways to expand what we are doing with. But not only will you be helping the podcast, if you contribute, you will also be supporting the Afrikaner Foundation, which is an institution, a new institution within the solidarity movement aimed at encouraging international support for the work of the various institutions involved with the solidarity movement. So with that in mind, we can jump into today's conversation. So we are joined today by none other than Steve Hofmeyr. Steve, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. We're going to speak in a foreign language.
Yes, we're speaking in English.
Which I like very much. The fact that I'm drinking water is no indication of how elated we are I am with the Trump victory, but there was no champagne when I got here. So goodbye to all the far left viewers. I, for one, am happy with the Trump victory, and I hope America finds its feet. Hey, it's a comeback for reality, isn't it? I hope so.
Yeah, so what's your view on the run-up to this election? One of my view before the election, before we started getting results, was that over the last two elections that Trump participated in, before this one, he always did better than the polls predicted, but this time the polls actually predicted that Trump would win.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, this shift that's happening in America. There was a point where it seemed as if the Republican cause is lost and Trump is a lost cause, and now there's this significant comeback. We don't know yet, as we're recording this, what the exact final results will be, but he has already declared victory, and it seems as if he didn't win by a small margin.
Yeah, well, the run-up was a circus, but listen, more important in this question, I think you've touched on it, is did you vote for Trump or did you vote for conservative policies? What kind of person are you when you go to vote? Are you mesmerized by a charismatic person? I can't see how anybody could vote for Kamala because of her personality, but then she didn't discuss any policy, so we don't know what she actually stands for. There's a lot of things that should be said here. Let's start with Musk and Rogan, who are certainly not stereotypical Republicans. In fact, they are downright liberal people. They decided to vote for Trump. Well, I don't think they voted for Trump, the person. I think they voted for, whoa, this is going too fast. Can we slow down, find our feet again, and then we carry on? And there could be a lot of other reasons. The war's going around the world. So I think that's the one thing one should discuss, is what are people voting for? America, when America walks away today with their new president, what do you think you're going to get? I know what we're going to get from the left. You just said the polls were quite accurate this time, but CNN reluctantly held on to Kamala and Blue Pictures and Blue Americas right unto the end until they had to concede defeat. So what are you waiting for? I'm thinking fear porn times 10 for the next year and a half. They're going to nail us with everything. I have a little tick box at home, which I'm going to tick every time Trump transgresses the things that the Liberals warned us against, which is what? Nuclear war, the button he's going to press. Remember, we feared that 8 years ago, which never happened. Misogyny and the destruction of women and women's rights. It's never going to happen, but I've got my tick box. I'm ready to tick that. What else is going to go bad for us? Wars. There's going to be lots of wars. In fact, Trump is probably going to end the wars. He's got a good cell phone relationship with pretty much everybody we don't like. You know, he'll phone Putin tomorrow. He can speak to China and North Korea, it seems, by a phone call. Because he comes with a different attitude. He doesn't really come with a political attitude. When he walks in, he comes with, I think, economic solutions. It's a kind of a trade-off that he comes with. He knows not to approach the Russians with anything else. They're not interested. So I'm thinking my tick boxes are going to remain empty for a long time because the fear porn is not going to happen. I think we'll get a massive onslaught from the left now that everything we heard up to the election and afterwards is fake news. And of course that mainstream media represents the only true news out there. I don't know who came up with that. Hey, we're in for crazy times, and you and I sit at the southernmost point of Africa and discuss a country that's very far away from us, but we know the impact of America on geopolitics worldwide, and someone like Trump, which has been very entertaining for many of us for a long time. You and I often phone each other and say, did you just hear what he said? Did you just hear what they did now? Because we're interested, we like it, and we know that it's inevitable that American decisions affect the rest of the planet.
So what do we make of this Nazi fascist accusation? Because it seems that the accusation of racism has lost its value. There's no point in accusing someone of racism anymore because everyone just accuses everyone of racism all the time. And now they have to step up, and now it's literally Hitler and it's fascism and Nazism. And there was a debate before this election between Sam Harris and Ben Shapiro, where Sam Harris made this argument as well, that Trump is a fascist and he wants to bring fascism to America. And Shapiro actually responded and said, if you truly believe that this person is going to turn America into a fascist dictatorship, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to vote? Or you have to do something more than just vote.
Yeah.
To which he then said, no, I think our institutions can sort of withstand what he's trying to do. But why is this happening? Now we're not racists, we're Nazis. That's sort of where we are.
Because, as you said, it's lost its power. I know this institution, you even sometimes have been called racist, which is crazy, probably 2 out of 6 times. 6 out of 6 times when I show my face anyway, I'm called the racist. I've never been found guilty of racism. I've never been found guilty of homophobia, not by a court of law, but by media and popular vote maybe. But I just say things as I see them. Philosophically, 2 things can't be the same at the same time. I think Leibniz said that. That's if you want to go read up on that. But if Trump is literally Hitler, who the hell was Hitler? There's only one Hitler for the context and the time of what he did, and that was Hitler, the Adolf one, the one with the funny moustache. You can't have 2 of them. They can't be the same people. The strangest thing about all these accusations is that the left carried on as if Trump didn't have a previous term where he could have done all these Nazi things, and he didn't even approach one Nazi policy. He just loved. He's a bit of a celebrity. He's a bit of a show-off. I can see that, and he says harsh things. But somehow most of us forgive him that. And I don't think you should frown too much when you look at the victory of Donald Trump at the moment. Half of America, slightly more than half, decided that's the kind. We're good with that.
And I should add, I think from a policy perspective, Trump is actually quite moderate. He's not a big right-winger. He wants border control. He wants more freedom for companies and sort of more economic freedom. And I can't think of extremist policies. Abortion is a very contentious issue in America. His view on that was the states should decide. And so it doesn't quite fit with this idea of bringing fascism.
No, it doesn't fit typical republicanism or conservatism at all. Let's take the lodestone of the left and Kamala, reproductive rights they call it. We all know it's just basically abortion. That's not a very popular thing to print on your flag when you're running out in the presidential race. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not a comfortable choice to make for women. It's not something that our men should be deciding for women either, if you ask me. But let's just show you how liberal the whole idea of abortion is, and that it's low-hanging fruit, is that if you are against abortion or pro-abortion, you are still pro-abortion. Because most of the people who are against abortion are actually against abortion in the first semester. Most people who are for abortion right up to the end, or if you're pro-Kamala, after birth. Then there's a third small group, probably evangelical Protestant Catholic group, which says that abortion, nay, under no circumstances. We get them as well. But I don't see Trump trying to make a stand to fit any of these three, you know. He's given us a very relative solution, which actually tells me that nothing has changed since Roe and Wade.
Yeah.
That if you can't have it nationally and you can't have it in your state, just drive to the next state, move to the next state. I can see how all the Hollywood actresses are very upset about this because they'd like to have as many abortions as possible, before Christmas especially. Well, sorry for you, you're going to have to get in your car with your big salary, or your limousine, and drive to another state to have an abortion. So I think as a lodestone policy for the left, that one fell flat. Kamala had to come to the table for every single debate. She had to appear on Rogan, and she had to spell out at least 10 positions that she has on policy, because Americans are not stupid. They understand policy, so let's discuss it, and she never did.
And this strange phenomenon of Joe Biden running and having all these bloopers in a row, and then eventually sort of withdrawing from the race after pressure. And it seems that the broad conclusion is that neither Biden nor Harris are actually in charge of, you might call it the left-wing establishment or the Democratic Party. But the question then is, who is in charge? It seems like we don't really know. There's someone in charge, or if anyone, but it doesn't seem like either Biden or Harris are actually the leaders or the people leading this. Maybe it's Obama, maybe it's some corporations funding them.
No, there's certainly some executive group that does that. We have that in South Africa. We say our presidents are pretty useless, but they are run by a little band surrounded by them. I think in a healthy democracy, that's probably what it is. You get a face that you put out there. America ended up with Trump and Kamala as the poster boys or poster girls, if you want. But there should be an executive behind them that's the thinkers. The guys on the left, I'm terrified to even mention who they may be. Pelosi, Obama, even worse. I have no idea who stands behind their policies, but their wars and things, you know. Somebody else is deciding all that. It'll be nice to expose all that one day for all of us to see. I'm sure Americans would like to know who stands behind them. Where Trump gives off a bit of a arrogance, a bit of a hubris, which means that even though we know there's an executive around him, and there should be, I'm speaking about more than just the Senate and the House and all the hoops you've got to jump to get something passed. I like that about a healthy democracy. Let's get back to this point. I do think Trump gives off this aura of, I don't care what the exec says, and I don't care what they told me 5 minutes ago. As the cameras roll, I am probably going to say exactly what the hell I think. And people like that as well. I think Kamala should have done more homework, been more aggressive on the policies, but they're not pretty policies. Someone made an incredible poll on X, or was it in a discussion on YouTube? I can't remember. Interesting thing what they did is they took the two candidates, Trump and Kamala, and they made a list of who he surrounds himself when it comes to family, chatting, business entities, interviews that he says hello to, people that kind of gravitates toward him. And then the same with Kamala Harris. And guess what the missing distinguishing factor was? Children.
Wow.
Families.
Yeah.
There's something basic the Americans missed. If you're standing out there this morning scratching your head about why Trump won this election and not Kamala, go back to the basicness of families.
And I think this is where J.D. Vance comes in, and it's really strange the extent to which he was targeted as being weird and being, that was sort of the trope. You know, we had all these media institutions calling him weird. When he was, I think it was the Kiffness here in South Africa, who said from everyone who's part of this race, he's the least weird. he's the most normal person of everyone.
But he can thank his lucky stars that in opposition to him, they put up someone like Wells.
Yeah.
You can't get more weird than that. That's not competition.
Yeah. I saw a clip on one of these debates where I think students at university were debating the election. And something that really struck me is someone asked a question about extremism. And the group that were representing or arguing for the conservative side said that they conceded that there are people on the right who are extremists and we should be cautious of them, or we should sort of keep our distance. But the people on the other side, the sort of more liberal side of the argument, were not willing to concede that they are left-wing extremists. They don't see left-wing extremism as a reality. Yeah. And we have the same thing in South Africa. So the right-wing extremists are you don't meet them. They are sort of on social media with
a bit of a figment, of people's imaginations.
And left-wing extremists, I think, well, they are newspaper editors and
they're on the streets. You see them. We see what they do when they desecrate monuments. They're there, throw paint on famous paintings. They're actually out there. But the right, and in Hollywood, you'll have to look far and wide to find that the actual ultimate villain in a Hollywood action movie is left.
Yeah.
That just never happens. It's always this ghost of right-wing extreme, the Nazi phantom hanging around everything. But it's just not really out there, It seems that the right actually just want their little space to live in, and they couldn't care about the rest. I think you did right. To distinguish between America and South Africa, so if you're listening from elsewhere, we are Afrikaners speaking the Afrikaans language of a small minority white group in a pretty beautiful country called South Africa. But we're also an acute minority, which means we don't get things right. We don't get what we want ever. Put it like that. Democracies in a Platonic and a Socratic and Aristotelian sense was always a great idea amongst consensual people. They already agreed on the majority of things. I've just given you the abortion example in America. Americans, we envy you for already being predominantly consensual. Nothing is strange in America if someone announces this thing is going to happen in English.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a controversy if somebody says that in South Africa, because it's the fourth most spoken language, and the third most spoken language, Afrikaans, hardly has a university left of the 20 or whatever state universities. So I think democracy is under duress, but it hasn't been. It's healthy in America. It's healthy in Europe. But we are living in times with extremely contestable policies. And we'd like to see how it's moved to a point. And from here onwards, we're going to see if those policies flourish and carry on, and if we bring a halt to some of the madness that the far left represents. During this week, I've been called racist and homophobic, when those are two positions I don't really have. My positions are extremism, entitlement. You can get that on the right as well. I don't like a right-wing entitled person either. I don't like it if you arrive only with a Bible to fight. Only you believe in this Bible. You're going to have to come with something more objective. That goes with racism and homophobia. I'd like to have everybody get their space to live in, but as soon as you become entitled, which means you're going to encroach on other people's spaces or their children's spaces, I'm going to put my foot down. The easiest thing in the world, of course, is to call me a racist or homophobic, but in my day-to-day life out there, you probably will never find an example of it.
Yeah, I want to read this because you responded to this on Twitter or on X. So we had this protest march yesterday.
What time of the day was it? Let me know.
We had this march yesterday, this protest march, and we'll talk about that now. And then you sang at the event, and the story was...
I sang the K word, Kalahari. So
the story was Steve Hofmeyr entertains people at the Stop BELA march, but then between Steve Hofmeyr and between entertain, they decided to sort of add some description.
Yeah, all my pronouns. I'm very proud to have them there.
and so the description is, this is the news article, this is the heading. It says, Steve Hofmeyr, the anti-LGBTQI+ Afrikaans activist who once wrote a song with the derogatory K word for black people, sang the apartheid national anthem, Die Stem, at a festival and called black people the architects of apartheid, entertains the Stop BELA March.
So I take up the whole first paragraph of the article, which has got nothing to do with the BELA March. I'm very proud of that. Sorry I hijacked your space there. But there's a couple of adjectives there. Yeah. Incredible that two of those things are true and the others are lies. The racism is a lie, the homophobic thing is a lie. That I once sang Die Stem is an incredible lie. I sing it every night of my life for 10 years. Don't ever say that again. And the last one was, I used the K word. I never used the K word ever in a song.
Just to interject there, I remember that story. It was in 2010 with the Dubula Ibunu case, or 2011.
That's right. And when Julius Malema sang the song "Kill the Boers,"
yes,
which has hardly been approached for.
And you made that song "Ons sal dit oorleef," and you said that if a judge says that
the K word is,
if the judge says "kill the Boer" is not hate speech, then there would be nothing wrong with you using the K word in a song.
But the judge actually did not find that it was a K. Not that they ever punished Julius Malema. But the interesting thing was the K word I left open in the song. So when I got to the word, there was a gap. If you read it, it said K, stripe, 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 which was exactly the same length as the K word, which you aren't allowed to use. But there's another word which I had optionally kept aside for in case the judge found for me, which he did, and that is krygers, warriors. So I put that word in there, and that's how I recorded the song. But some opportunists out there with recording studios took the song as it is and just sang in the one word.
Oh, really?
So the song is out there with the K word in it, but it's not me. Sorry, you can go listen to it, it's not me, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and everybody says I sang the K word, so I'm sorry if that's how you listen to music, but it wasn't me. I never recorded the song like that, and I probably wouldn't have ever.
Well, okay, so let's talk about this march, because you were there. It was a very big event. There were 10,000 people. You never know exactly how many people are at an event like this.
But it must be said, we can sample from such a small minority group, as I mentioned earlier on, that if anything over 2,000 people arrive, it's a bit of a success. So when 10,000 people arrive, that is incredible for this group. Of course, it was a wide group, all South Africans. But they were there. It must be said how triggering the color orange is for people worldwide.
Yes.
In America, if you say orange, half the leftists just have a hernia. In South Africa, if you arrive in orange, the left media go out of their minds.
Yeah. And I don't know, presumably people don't know where the history behind the color orange and why we use it. Firstly, it's the color of the solidarity movement of AfriForum and so forth. But it's part of our ancestry. So the argument is that orange represents apartheid. So that if you wear orange, that means you're a racist. But orange goes back to hundreds of years before.
To the Prince of
the Prince of Vlag from the Netherlands.
From the Netherlands.
And so, but it's strange. That was one of the main. Again, talking about this, how the media responds to these things. That was one of the main arguments about the march. Is you guys are wearing orange, so we can see what you're trying to do there.
Yeah, there were orange T-shirts, there were blue T-shirts, but predominantly the DA, which is left of centre. And then there were, of course, lots of white T-shirts. Why? Because the majority of people wear white T-shirts anywhere.
Yeah.
And a couple of black T-shirts, I suppose. Of course, they saw the colours of the old flag. Really, these are the things that drive voters away from liberal candidates.
Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
And I remember when we started talking about arranging this march, my view, exactly what you said now, was that if we do a march like this, we can't be fewer than 2,000 people. It has to be more. Yeah. And it turns out it was a lot more.
Yeah. And it looked like even more.
Yes. You know,
when that long snake went down that small road, it just carried on forever and ever. Yeah. And everybody went, oh Lord, there's more than we thought. We thought there were only a marginalised 25. Look at this, it's crazy.
Yeah, at the end where we made the speeches and presented the memorandum, there was not enough space for everyone to stand. So the march is about the BELA Act. It's about targeting schools, of giving the government the authority to change a school's language policy and admissions policy. And we know why they want to do that, because they've said so. We've had people like Panyaza Lesofie say they hate Afrikaans. They can't believe there are still Afrikaans schools. But so why? So what do you make of this phenomenon? Because in a certain sense, and that's what we said yesterday, that this is, you can have all these destructive policy ideas, but there's a certain point where it's a red line.
Yeah. I think it was Dirk Herman who said, we've reached the red line. And it seems the red line, we're actually going back to the points we made earlier on. The red line is our children, our families. We're willing for you to carry on and change everything around us and bring in the craziest of things that you want. You know, if a 60-year-old man comes to me and says he identifies as a 4-year-old, I will go, well, hallelujah, Merry Christmas, have a dummy, you know.
Yeah.
But if a 60-year-old comes to me and says, I identify as a 4-year-old and I insist on access to your child's nursery school, I become all the things they tell me.
Yeah.
The worst of things you can call me. And it's like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to, and I think that's what's happening here. Our red line is our schools, our children. You forget to mention to an international audiences that although we are a minority language, we have almost no universities for us. When we do have a school and when we do build a university, it achieves in world standards. It outachieves any of the other schools in this country anyway, and on the continent. So I can't think of anything else but envy. When you leave these Afrikaners to their own devices, they're going to erect something, and guess what? It's going to work. It's going to damn well work. And it works without favors from government. It works without, in fact, it works in spite of the amount of our taxes that come back to us. It hardly ever happens. I'm beginning to think that our situation here is a micro example of macro problems elsewhere facing the world right now. You can leave your borders open if you want to. Just don't wake up one morning as a minority in your own country, because then you're going to feel what it feels like. And I always warn people, if it happens, phone me. I'll give you a 20-year experience of what happens from here onwards. So it's got to be mentioned that we have a socialist government. They'd like to have more departments, and the more departments they have here, the more interference from state, the better for them. More money scraped off income tax for them. This is what socialist governments do. We go, no, thank you. We don't need more departments. We don't need more departmental influence. We don't need you to take decisions for us. We're willing to do that inside the school and at least have the parents present.
Yeah, and I think one of the lessons that people ought to learn from South Africa, especially in America and Europe, is that don't think that once you become a minority in your own country, that's when the attacks are going to stop. So they only hate you until you become a minority, and they only discriminate. They want to discriminate until you're a minority, and then we're all equal and level. Yeah. If South Africa is any indication, it says that that's actually when it starts escalating.
When it gets worse.
Yeah.
And please don't ever lose. You can poo-poo nationalism if you want to, and you can poo-poo nation states if you want to. Just don't lose your sovereignty. You will never get it back again, and it'll be a struggle. Now, the struggle has made us wide awake. The struggle has made us quite interesting, I think, and resourceful. You work for a company that is a demonstration of how resourceful this little marginalized acute minority can be. So import our people when you get to that point where you become a minority in your own country.
So at this March, a memorandum was presented to the government, but then also to leaders of some of the opposition parties who are part of this new government of national unity. And there was some hype about this new government where the ANC, of course, went below 50% the first time since 1994. Yeah. And now they're governing in coalition with some opposition parties, and many believe that, well, there was this sort of hype that, okay, now we're back into the 1994 era, South Africa is sort of saved or on the right track. What's your view of this government of national unity?
I monitor it skeptically, but I must say it's probably the first sign of relief in 30 years that you take the power from that power-hungry rabies like ANC government and you divide it. Some of the negative points is the government is even bigger now than it used to be. It seems like coalitions all over Europe. There's going to be a lot of tug of war. Already yesterday I saw it happening. There's not a lot of peace. But that is why you have these coalitions, is because we can't agree and we can't afford to have one group run away with all the power. That's the only positive thing about these coalitions, or a government of national unity, as we call it. I asked one of the politicians yesterday, if South Africa goes to the international court to make a case against Israel for human rights transgressions during war. Firstly, who the hell are we to get away with something like that? Who are we to get away with something like that? Secondly, where does that leave the government of national unity? Are you all for this case that's been opened? Certainly that was an ANC initiative, but the ANC is now only a party. It is not the ruling government anymore. How does it change things out there? It's an important question for us, as it is for the Americans. Trump was the one who actually initiated the Abraham Accords, which is probably the only positive thing that happened in the Middle East in the last 20 years. I see peace on the horizon, and I hope everybody shares my optimism.
So, well, I think for me, it's difficult to foresee that this government of national unity would maintain or would be in place for the next 5 years, at some point, I would guess that there's going to be some friction. And we see some of it already with, for example, the BELA Act. And I think there's some sigh of relief among a lot of people. But still, the worst position we could possibly be in is to have a government like this, including the opposition parties, that then serve as a rubber stamp. So the ANC just implements laws like the BELA Act and these national health insurance, all these socialist laws. And the other parties, the opposition parties, are too scared that they might lose their space or their spot in this government of national unity, so they don't say anything. That would be a worse situation.
Yeah, you did right. And the question is, who is the opposition? If there's a government of national unity and all the parties are included, all right, you still need an opposition. Yes. You still need someone to check this. I know there are parties like if an MK who say they are. But Lord, I don't know.
Their opposition to the left to make sure that they are...
to make sure that these things happen.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the good things about... one of the differences between South Africa and Zimbabwe is Zimbabwe had most of their hopes, or Rhodesia as it was known back then, but much of their hope was placed on opposition parties. And I think what's good in our context is we have strong civil society. We have a long list of institutions that are not necessarily political parties. You need the parties. But I think also that's one of the lessons from South Africa is America and Europe is very much focused on voting and getting your party in power. And we've learned this lesson of also organizing outside of party politics.
Yeah. Which we're a very good example of course. And the greatest threat against these institutions, even if they think they are safe, is of course an overweight one-party state, which we had up to the government of national unity. So I think our institutions are now safer. How much safer, I don't know, but I think it's a little safer than somebody walking in and taking over or erasing it from the table. So, well, firstly, well done for what you guys are doing in spite of the bullying from the top. You do it with your own money, your members. I'm a big supporter of you, as you know. I think your answer is the answer for people not seeing a future in their countries, left or right. They don't know where the circus is going. This is really the only answer, is go to your local area, find a strong institution and work for your environment right there. Don't worry about the next province, start there. But obviously, you guys are better at verbalizing how it works.
Steve Hofmeyr, thank you very much. Good to have you on the podcast.
Not at all. Time for champers. Let's go to get champagne. What's this water? Let's go to champagne now. It's time to celebrate. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good conversation. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Adam Strutz. If you support this podcast and the work that we are involved with as the Afrikaner Foundation and the broader solidarity movement in South Africa, I want to encourage you to become a more active supporter. You can do this first and foremost by subscribing to our various social media channels, by leaving a comment and sharing what you have seen. But other than that, also by making a small monthly contribution to the work that we are doing through the Afrikaner Foundation's website, or by making a once-off donation. Links in the description.